basically two things. Number one is your cost of unemployment and how to fix unemployment. So let's start. So what's the first cost of unemployment? With the first cost of unemployment, simply there is a loss of income that happens. Why do people lose income? And the answer is this: that when the unemployment goes up, there will be a reduction in what we call standard of living. So our standard of living for people go down, right? And that fall of standard of living would mean there will be people who will be worse off. So first point that we raise is just that the when the unemployment goes up, you will see a fall of income for individuals. Secondly, guys, there's also an implication on government spending and taxation. You know, when the unemployment is going up, two things will happen. When unemployment goes up, not only government expenditure goes up because unemployment benefits will be going up. You know, unemployment benefits will go up. The second thing that will happen is also because unemployment is going up, we know this that the tax revenue will fall, right? Which would mean taxes are going uh, down and G is going up, which means T minus G is less than zero, which means government is running into what we call a budget deficit. And the problem of budget deficit will be what? Government may need to either, like borrow funds, right? Or cut down on sort of spending elsewhere. Maybe they cut down on education, maybe they cut down on infrastructure, and that's not a good sort of story, because that would mean we will again run into this issue of reduction in your public and merit goods supply will show a decrease. Make sense, guys? So public and merit goods will show a decrease. Any questions? Anyone? Sure. So there is an implication on the government spending and on taxation, and this is the cause of concern, because a country where the unemployment is high, there will be a budget deficit, and that's not good for the country, and that's not good for the infrastructure and public and merit goods and other goods that government is supposed to provide. Make sense? Then the third point, guys, is about the opportunity cost to the economy. We did this in AS as well, that if there is unemployment happening, we know this, that the economy will not be on its PPC, economy will be under its PPC, like point A rather than point B. What's the opportunity cost, therefore? The opportunity cost is this, that there is what we call wasted and unused resources which could have been employed elsewhere. And unemployment will mean the potential output, you will be, if this is my potential output, you will be under your potential output. Your actual output is below your potential output. And by the way, if you're unemployed for a very long time, what will skill loss will happen, which would mean there could be a possibility that the whole GDP, the whole PPC may move backward. If there's a loss of skill, let's say I'm unemployed for, let's say, 10 years or something, and I'm not getting a job, then I might not be good to work, and there might be a shift of resources backward. So we say this, that you are first of all producing below your potential, and if some people some people permanently leave the labor market because they've lost the motivation or they've lost the skills, the LRAS will shift backward or the PPC will shift backward, which isn't a good sign as well. Okay, which is not a good sign as well, because आपके पास permanent, you have a permanent reduction in resources. Inflation will also be low. Inflation is low, but that's not the right kind of inflation to be low, honestly speaking, because low inflation is good, desirable, but this is more like a deflation kind of a thing happening. Sorry, you have a question? Either you borrow fund from different places, or you cut down spending elsewhere. Yeah. Are we happy with the third point as well? The short run versus long run impact. Yeah. The fourth one, guys, is basically social cost of unemployment. There's a social cost of unemployment in terms of uh, economic and social deprivation. You know, like if you get unemployed and you lose income, you might not be then hanging out with the same kind of people sometimes because your social status is not the same anymore. There could be a rise in crime sometimes. There could be social dislocation where people find that the divorce rates are going up or health indicators or standard life expectancy may get affected. And it's seen that if people lose income, they find these kind of issues like health issues, social issues, family issues to come about. So areas of high employment we see uh, uh, not only these social issues but also a rise in inequality, where people are probably earning less money and therefore have a very different standard of living. Divorce rate. It's also seen that at least in the US, whenever unemployment go up, divorce rates also go up. So your health, your social, your family, all of these factors can get affected due to rise in unemployment, which is sad, but that's how it is. Make sense? Now I'm going to move on to something very important, which is what are the policies to correct unemployment. You can expect, by the way, an essay question on part A, causes of unemployment, part B, policies to correct unemployment. So I do plan to give you guys this in your exam. Uh, yes, Zamir, I know. It all depends from individual to individual. Am I good to move on? Inequality basically means that like worsening of inequality means the people, like for example Michigan is suffering from unemployment. As a state, its GDP is much lower than, let's say, other states of the US. Okay, guys, what are the policies to correct unemployment? When you look at policies to correct unemployment, I want to make this kind of like a roadmap. So if it's two kinds of unemployment, one is what we call equilibrium unemployment. Another one is what we call disequilibrium unemployment. The disequilibrium unemployment, remember, were two kinds, but in the disequilibrium unemployment, be it whatever the kind, what works well is what we call fiscal and monetary policy. In other words, your demand side policy. And I'll explain this in 1 minute. On the other hand, for equilibrium unemployment, you will have what we call supply side policies. And by the way, if you use demand side policies for equilibrium unemployment, you'll actually make things worse. We'll also see that. Okay. So equilibrium unemployment is best solved through supply side policies, and disequilibrium unemployment best solved through demand side policies, which is fiscal policy and monetary policy. Okay. So let me write this: fiscal policy and monetary policy. How does it work? Let's talk about that as soon as you guys are ready to copy or move on. Okay. Remember, guys, demand side policies. When we looked at demand side policies, we saw if this is what my AD of demand and ASS demand, right? Had it been real wage unemployment or which was or your demand deficient, both cases, the wage rate was above equilibrium. Isn't that true? Right? If you are a classical economist, you'll say this wage rate has gone up because market imperfection like your trade unions or government. If you are a Keynesian, you'll say that it was at equilibrium, demand went down, and because wages were sticky, the wage got stuck at W1. But both of this set of economists would agree if the AD goes up, if you can make the AD goes up, you can bridge the gap and make unemployment go down. Isn't that true? If you are, uh, if you want this wage to become the wage rate, you need to make the AD of labor to go up from 80 naught to 80, 81, for example, right? From 80 naught to 81, and that basically means when you do what we call fiscal policy, let's say G goes up or T goes down, this is your fiscal policy, right? That will make the AD goes up, and since labor is a derived demand, AD of labor will also go up. And if AD of labor goes up, you will be able to bridge the gap, which was basically the quantity supplied was more than quantity demanded. Make sense? Vice versa, guys, if you use monetary policy. So monetary policy, in the monetary policy, what will we do? We make the money supply to go up, interest rate to go down, and that will make the C to go up, I to go up, therefore the AD to go up, and therefore AD of labor to go up as well. So fiscal and monetary policy, G is of course government spending, yes. Fiscal and monetary policy, and are they expansionary fiscal policy and monetary policy or deflationary or contractionary? They are expansionary fiscal and monetary policy, exactly. So we use expansionary fiscal and monetary policy to make aggregate demand for labor to go up. Sorry? Yeah, remember, labor is a derived demand, means basically when more goods are demanded, more labor that makes that good is demanded. If more people study economics, more teachers who teach economics will go in demand, rise in demand. Make sense? So higher the demand for the good, higher the demand for the labor that makes that good. So make the AD of the economy go up, automatically AD of labor will go up and this gap will be filled. Okay, so demand side policies are basically the policies you will use for disequilibrium unemployment. It happens because your demand isn't enough. In fact, Keynesian's view was demand deficient unemployment. Now, classical view, remember classical economists said that, you know, if the government intervention is not there, or if, for example, trade unions are not powerful enough, then you can still have the same solution. But they will be happy if the gap is filled and the minimum wage becomes the real wage. You know, if the minimum wage becomes the real wage. Now let's move on to the supply side policy. Are we going to move on? Yeah. Supply side policies, remember, if you remember from AS, am I going to change the screen? Yeah. Okay. When you look at equilibrium unemployment was for three reasons. Frictional, which was people were in between jobs or looking for better jobs. Structural, where there was a loss of jobs because of a permanent decrease in demand, or, for example, economies moving from agricultural economy to manufacturing economy to services sector. Or the third one was seasonal, right? All three of these can be solved through supply side policies. And supply side policies are basically policies that are designed to make, let me write this. In fact, let me show you a note about this. All three of these policies can be solved through, because remember fictional unemployment? If there was better information, this could go away. If there was higher mobility of labor, this could go away. If there was more skills provided to labor, even the seasonal demand where they're not operational, they can get job. Let's say if I'm seasonally unemployed, right? Let's say schools say that in June, July, a teacher won't get a salary, he's unemployed, and we'll employ him again in August when we need him. For example, schools don't do that. If they do that, then June, July, I will be unemployed. I can do two things: stay unemployed in those 2 months, wait for my job to start in August, or maybe in those 2 months find myself a new job if I have this relevant skills to be employed. Make sense? So what are supply side policies? Supply side policies are policies um, designed to increase economic growth. Effective supply side policy will push the LRAS to the right. This increases economic growth and reduces inflationary pressure. So look at this, guys. Your LRAS may shift to the right. This is the Keynesian LRAS, may shift to the right, and it may not only bring about GDP to go up. Look at this. Not only GDP goes up, your price level goes down, and it can also make, because the price level goes down, it can make your X minus M to go up. Through supply side policies, we are able to achieve a lot of goals, because not only your price level is going down, your GDP is going up, your unemployment is going down, and because price level is going down, you may also see X minus M to go up. So all four goals can be achieved through supply side policies. What are these supply side policies that can make the aggregate supply curve shift to the right? Remember, aggregate supply curve is attached to the cost of production or productivity. Anything that improves the quality or quantity of factors of production can lead to AS to rise. Okay. So what are supply side policies? For example, supply side policies could include encouraging education and training and improving the flexibility in the market, reforming trade unions, lowering the trade unions' involvement, promoting competition through privatization and deregulation. All are supply side policies. With more education and training, you will have higher mobility of labor. Improving the flexibility with markets operate, basically remove barriers to trade, remove even like monopoly power so that there's more competition, make trade unions to become less powerful so that there is no minimum wage kind of a situation, promote more competition in the market so that prices are not that high, monopoly power will come on chahiye, and deregulation basically means letting more competition happen in the market. Make sense? Any question before we move on? Okay, so guys, just a quick sort of analysis that we want to present is just that between demand side policies and supply side policies, this is an important point to remember. One of the drawbacks of supply side policies is basically number one. Anyone, what's the drawback of supply side policy that can come to your mind? Number one is difficult to monetize. So it's difficult to see the effect of the policy in isolation. Number two is it takes much longer. No, I think more importantly is that it takes much longer, because let's say education, if you want to fix the education of the country, it will take many years before you'll see the impact to happen. It takes much longer, which means time lags. There's another big problem that some of you guys are missing out. Is it cheap or expensive to do supply side policy? Yes. Number three is it's expensive. Between demand side and supply side policy is expensive and long run impact. So it's not a quick fix, but it's a permanent fix of the economy. Like if, for example, government decides to put a lot of resources in education, you'll see a large long-term impact to happen in an economy. So between supply side and demand side policy, by the way, doesn't also have any conflict. It's a good policy. Remember, because demand side policies mein kya hota hai, just to let you guys know this, that in the demand side policies, remember this guys, that AD curve will shift to the right. So this is my AD naught and AS naught. AD curve will shift to the right. What's the problem of that? When the AD goes to the right, GDP may go up, but inflation may also happen. So there is a what we call conflict of objectives, because while your GDP is going up, but your inflation is also going up. While your unemployment is going down, but you also may. But here it's not the case, because when your aggregate supply curve is shifting to the right, there is no policy conflict, which is the big advantage of that. The only downside is that it's a very expensive one. It's difficult to sort of isolate the effect of it very cleanly, and the effect will only happen in the long run. Make sense? Any questions before we move on? Shayad, yes, you're right. If you're being taxed heavily for supply side policies, maybe yeah. And by the way, supply side policies are also very long. High ranging kind of policies, because you're trying to improve education and try to look flexibility. So there could be challenges that can happen. I want to show you. We have some time, so let me quickly show you. Any questions before we move on? Yep. Explain. So because like supply side policy, let's say if you're looking at education, and if you are ask how has education changed your economy, it's going to be very hard to figure it out, because it takes many years for its impact to be shown. Time lags is also like the idea that by in general you're trying to fix something which is wrong run. The first one is that normally when the government spending go up, you see AD go up in a very short span of time, and you know exactly how the economy has been affected. But supply side policies may you're trying to lower the power of, let's say, trade unions. So, and that's impact and or increasing competition. So it's a very hard to quantify kind of a data. Make sense? Look at this one. What differences are there, if any, between fiscal policy, monetary policy, and supply side policies? So we talk about what a fiscal policy is, monetary policy is both of them are demand side policies, and then we talk about supply side policies, and we'll also look at the pros and cons of these policies, because fiscal and monetary policies has some limitations, while supply side policies, while they're desirable, they might also have their own downside. So you talk about fiscal policy is changing GNT, monetary policy is about money supply, and supply side policy is about LRAS curve. And so supply side policy is looking at economic growth to happen in the long run. Make sense? Similarly, look at this one. Distinguish between monetary and fiscal policy, discuss whether fiscal policy may be used to influence the standard of living in a country. So we can talk about what is the difference between fiscal and monetary policy, and discuss whether fiscal policy may be used to influence. And the answer is that you could use fiscal policies to change the standard of living, because government spending goes up on public goods and merit goods. You may see standard of living to go up, if not in the short run, but in the long run. But you also can use, in a conclusion, you can write, you can also use supply side policies to change the standard of living in the economy, because these are demand side policies, but supply side policies could also be very useful. Got it? In 2016, government in some countries were concerned about inflation. This examine the view that recession can only be solved by monetary policy. And the answer is no, you can also use, first you talk about what is monetary policy, how does it solve the problem of recession? Then you talk about how you can use even fiscal policy to solve the problem of recession. Can we use supply side policy? Well, if you make the aggregate supply curve shift to the right, the price level may go down. Maybe you can say this, that it becomes cheaper and you can increase basically. But normally demand side policies seems like more of a good way to solve the problem, because supply side policy may take much longer. You might not see the impact of education on people's mobility to happen very quickly. Make sense? A country with an open economy has an increasing demand for its exports and a fall in supply of its labor. Consider the effectiveness of using only monetary policy in this situation. Exports are going up, okay? So exports are going up, and aggregate supply of labor is going down. So clearly, it's a case of also using supply side policies because you want the labor supply to increase, right? But if you use also monetary policy is interest rate going what should you do? You want to make the interest rate going up or going down? How will this affect, by the way, general price level and national output? If exports are going up, AD will go up, right? If and basically fall in labor would mean supply will fall. So this is the kind of thing that's happening. AS is going up and AS is going down, which means price level is going up. You want to, if you use monetary policy, you want the price level to go down. What policy will you use? Will you make, first of all, monetary policy, what policy will you use? Maybe you make interest rate to go up. If interest rate goes up, AD will fall and that will control inflation. But then you can talk about that that's not the only policy you want to use. Best way to deal with this problem is through supply side policy. Because AD going up is good. You don't want AD to not go up. But the problem is A is going backward, which means use of supply side policies can be useful in this scenario. Also, by the way, fiscal policy, can you use fiscal policy? Think about this way. When the tax rates go up, what happens if the tax rates go up? People are discouraged to work. Isn't that true? If the tax rates go up, so maybe the fall in supply is happening because you're taxing too much. So maybe reducing tax rates could also make us have a scenario where disposable income may go up. You may say aggregate supply curve may shift to the right. Okay. So in these kind of questions, guys, once you know the framework, these questions are not that difficult, to be honest. Monetary policy alone is unlikely to have any significant effect on the real variables such as the level of output, but it's only effective way of controlling inflation. Critically evaluate this view. So in this question, guys, talk about how monetary policy, this is more about monetary policy and its limitations. Remember, we talk about monetary policy and we talk about how what do you call it? When the liquidity trap. Remember liquidity trap scenario? Liquidity trap scenario can happen, and that's why they're saying no significant effect on real variables when there's a liquidity trap. Yes, that's true. And at the higher interest rates, it's effective. So talk about liquidity trap, talk about why it's Keynesian's view, and this is probably about talking about the limitations of the monetary policy. Got it? So what is monetary policy? How does it affect the economic variables? When does it stop to affect variables according to the Keynesians? And so on. Okay. Guys, tomorrow's discussion will be wrapping up this chapter. Okay. Write to Sir Raza and he's going to send you the microwave one as well. Bye-bye, guys. Take care. Any questions?